Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together, please. Om Jnana Timarandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Didarti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dhina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapcha Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Prishabhana Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is. Translation and commentary His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Today's texts are of Chapter 5, Karma Yoga Action, Chapter 5, Karma Yoga Action in Krishna Consciousness, and we're due to do 8 and 9, I believe, correct? Jolly good. Okay, please repeat. So it's a double verse, so you're all great pandits and learned in Sanskrit, so I'll do one line by line. Naiva kachit karomiti yukto manyeta tatvavit pasyan shrimvan sprisan grinan griran asnam gaccham swapnam swasam pralayapam vishrijam grinan Onmisan nimesanapi Indriyateshu Vatanta iti dharayan Naiva kinchit karomiti Yukto manyeta tatvavit Darshan Shrinvan Sprishan Greenran Asnan Gachan Swapan Aswan Pralapan Vrishrijam Greenan Unmisam Nimishan Api Indriyateshu Vatanta iti dharayan. Matajis, have a go. Naiva kinchit karomiti yuktamanyurta tatvavit pashvangrinam vrishan krinan asnan gachan swapan vrishan pralapan abhidhan brinan unmisham umisham api Indriya indriyateshu vartanta iti dharayan. Okay, word for word. Please repeat. No. Never. Ever. Certainly. Kinchit. Anything. Karomi. I do. Iti. Thus. Yuktaha. Engaged in the divine consciousness. Manyeta. Thinks. Tatvavit. One who knows the truth. Pasyan. Seeing. Shringvan. Hearing. Sprisan. Touching. Griran. Smelling. Asnan. Eating. Gachan. Going. Swapan. Dreaming. Swasan. Breathing. Pralapan. Talking. Vishrijan. Giving up. Grinan. Accepting. Unmisan. Opening. Nimesan. Closing. Api. In spite of. Indriyani. The senses. Indriya ateshu. In sense gratification. Vartante. Let them be so engaged. Iti. Thus. Dharayan. Considering. Okay. So translation, Srila Prabhupada. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. Okay. Oh, please repeat. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. Purport Srila Prabhupada. A person in Krishna consciousness is pure in his existence, and consequently he has nothing to do with any work which depends upon 5 immediate and 5 remote causes: the doer, the work, the situation, the endeavor, and the fortune. This is because he is engaged in the transcendental loving service of Krishna. Although he appears to be acting with his body and senses, he is always conscious of his actual position, which is spiritual engagement. In material consciousness, the senses are engaged in sense gratification. But in Krishna consciousness, the senses are engaged in the satisfaction of Krishna's senses. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is always free, even though he appears to be engaged in affairs of the senses. Activities such as seeing and hearing are actions of the senses meant for receiving knowledge, whereas moving, speaking, evacuating are actions of the senses meant for work. A Krishna conscious person is never affected by the actions of the senses. He cannot perform any act except in the service of the Lord, because he knows that he is the eternal servitor of the Lord. Yes. Mukum karochi chalam phangam laite girim yad kripa tamaham bande Shri Guru Dinatarinam. Naiva kinchit karomi ti yukto man yeta tatpavit. Pashyan srivan sprisan grinan asnan gaccham swapan swasan. Pralapan visrijan krinan usmisan nimesan napi. Indriya indriyateshu Vatanta itidharayan. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. So this verse is a great mystery to those that think they're the body, right? If you're in this illusion that you're the material body, then how can you understand this? Because your material body is you. So how can you be aloof from all this seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about? Right? There are 10 Gyanendriyas. That means knowledge acquiring senses. Hearing, touching, seeing, tasting, and smelling. They correspond with the Akash, the air, fire, water, and earth. And then there are 5 working senses. They're related to the other 5 Pancha Mahabhutas. The arms move in the air, these are called Kamendriyas. They're senses by which one performs work. Just like I'm using my ability to speak. So this is a Kamendriya. So you can relate this to the Akash, to hearing, sound. And then the other working sense, the arms move in the air, if you like. This is a way to remember it. And then you have the fire of digestion, the torso. Then that is related to fire element. Then you have the genital, male or female, different fluids are there for procreation. And then you have the legs which stand upon the earth. So 5 working senses, they depend upon the prana. If you read Kapil Dev's teaching to Devahuti, his mother, this is described. And the knowledge acquiring senses, they are related to the buddhi. Buddhi means intelligence. So the intelligence receives the knowledge from the senses and analyzes it, and then gives a conclusion. And the soul makes the decision. Because the mental body is thinking, feeling, willing. We think about something, then we feel about it, we intuitively analyze it. First one, thinking, is grasping the subject matter. Then we analyze it, feel about, and then we will. And this is divided into sankalp, vikalp. That means you say yes, sankalp, vikalp, no. Acceptance, rejecting. And then there's action, karma, work, on the basis of the 3 mental processes. Prabhupada mentions here the 5 components of action also. You will get that later on, I think, 15th chapter. The first one is the doer. Do you remember? That means the person. Then his senses, the work he's performing with his body. So that is a separate element. You can see the relationship, but the person, the action, and then the environment that he's performing the action within. Then the endeavor itself, that which he has made sankalp, determination, I shall do this. I will clean my room. He's made a determination. And then the fruit of the endeavor. He wants a nice clean room. So there's the doer, the work he's performing, the environment within which he's performing the work. There's the aim of his activity, the endeavor, and then the fruit. So this is the material consciousness. We perform activity because we want a fruit. But this is absent in the devotee. We'll discuss that a little later in the class when we talk about the mentality of a devotee. But here, all this activity, endeavor, and desire for fruit, and the material body and the senses, how can you be aloof from them? Now, you're all devotees, very learned, right? So you know the first thing in spiritual life is to understand you're not the body. Yes. Jivatma. I am the soul. So that is the start of spiritual life. So we're discussing a few days ago with my friend here about how in the West they have so many great philosophers and they've written about this and made very complicated, elaborate ideologies and systems of thought, but they're all based on the idea that I'm the body, and that therefore perfection is to somehow improve the bodily situation. And even better than that, if I can live beyond death and become a god somehow or other. But of course, all this is a waste of endeavor, because you're going to live, don't worry. There's no such thing as death, because Krishna's first point to Arjuna is that you're not the body. You're the soul within the body. So without that understanding, you're in the pit of ignorance. You're in the Maya Shakti. You're in illusion. You're in the darkness. Just like Prabhupada said in the purport. You're performing activities and you're perceiving this and that, good and bad, and you're making determination or rejection, sankalp, vikalp. So you're in the relative world. So we know there's 4 states of consciousness. We've explained this many times, right? Susupti, dreamless sleep, very refreshing, because the soul just bathes in the Brahman. Then there's Swapna, dreaming, mentioned here. And then there is the waking state, Jagri. So it is this waking state is the world of duality. And above that there is Turiya, or the absolute Krishna conscious spiritual platform, Brahman, the actual spiritual, just like Krishna says here, a person in the divine consciousness. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur in the Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he explains that. He says when the sadhaka experiences the divine, then he realizes this is a level of consciousness that is new to him. So he becomes very refreshed. Just like susupti, dreamless sleep, is refreshing, but it is an unconscious refreshing. But when you attain the divine consciousness, then you're consciously refreshed and you become out of illusion. So the jagra, or the consciousness of the world, is this another dream state. When we dream, when we're asleep, we're dreamless and then we dream. Then we go dreamless and then we dream, they say, and we're dreamless and then we come into consciousness. So when we dream, we all know that this is illusion, correct? It has a reality per se, but it's temporary. And it is imaginative. Oh, I'm being chased by a tiger. Oh, I'm the king of the world. I'm the heavyweight champion or something. We may dream in so many ways. I'm on parikram. So, when we awaken, we think, yes, that was a distortion in my consciousness because of the three modes of material nature. It was imaginary. Of course, devotees do get darshan in the dream state. Krishna can appear. But when we awaken, then we think, now I'm in reality. And this is the relative world. So we can understand how much we are free of the relative world or the material consciousness by examining our waking state. This is the world of duality. So this is the world of like and dislike, accept and reject. For example, if you were sitting next to a polar bear near the North Pole, you might say to the polar bear, it's very cold. And the polar bear will say to you, no, you should be here in winter, then it's cold. So you're thinking it's cold, and the polar bear's thinking it's very balmy today, very warm, right? But you're sitting next to each other, like two old school friends having a chat. One is thinking it's cold, the other one's thinking it's hot. So, everyone in this material world, on the material platform, has constructed his own little universe of things he likes, accepts, things that he doesn't like. A universe of friends and enemies, good and bad, left wing, right wing, politics, right? And there's so many material religions, right? If you accept our prophet, then you're one of the chosen people, and everyone else is an animal. If you accept our prophet, you're going to heaven, but if you don't, you're going to hell. You're our enemy to be put to death. If you accept our prophet, then you'll go to heaven. And if you don't accept our prophet, then you're a devil and you'll go to hell. Friends and enemy. My cricket team is India, so I hate the Pakistani team. My football team is Manchester United, so I hate Manchester City. Like this. So they're on the bus, and some are loving Manchester United and some are loving Manchester City, sitting next to each other. One doesn't like chips, the other one doesn't like rice. Everyone, politically, theoretically, psychologically, has his own little world. Now, some of those people are so puffed up that they think that their little world is valuable. And so then they write political ideology, like Marxism, Marx and Engels. Engels was like the mentor of Marx. He became a Satanist. His father, his family actually converted to Christianity, but he became a Satanist. He even wrote this, "I have committed my soul to the devil." He even wrote like that. So then they write a whole thing, communist theory. The workers will unite and throw out the capitalists. And then the capitalists are saying, no, you have to have greed because that will generate activity and that will generate an advanced society. And then there's psychologists, right? Oh, they want to analyze the thoughts and they think, if somebody stands in this way, he's doing this, and if he dreams like that, he's dreaming like this. Like there was this guy called Freud, right? He was actually a cokehead. Freud. So he used to snort cocaine and write his psychological ideas. And I read a review. When he was going to America, he told his friends, he was from Austria, Germany, he said, I'm going to the West and I'm taking poison to them. So that's actually what I read it in a review of his life. So in this way, it's all poison. It's all the croaking of frogs. Fifth canto. The frogs croak. I have this idea, you have that idea. No, my croaking is better than your croaking. What happens when the frogs croak? The snake comes and eats them. So in the forest of the material world, all these false political ideas and psychological ideas and all these economic systems, they're all bogus. They're all the croaking of frogs. And they're always changing and in flux and against each other. And this is the material illusion. But frogs are frogs. They never sound melodious. And the snake of time comes and devours them. But like we said in the Vyas Puja, in the muddy pond, there's another creature that lives there, not the frog. And that is the lotus. And the lotus grows from the pond, but it opens its petals to the sun and the moon and blooms in great beauty. So that is the divine consciousness. We are in this material body, a spirit soul. And the living entity, the person, is three parts. He's the body, the mind, and the soul. And it's all supervised by the super soul. So the living entity is not just the body, not just the mind, he's the soul. And without this primary understanding, there can be no successful political, social, psychological solution. And we see now in Kali Yuga, everyone, it's the age of quarrel, right? All the frogs are saying, my croaking is the best. But the advice of the Krishna to the Arjuna is not to croak back to the frogs, but to become like the lotus and open yourself to the spiritual atmosphere, the fourth level of consciousness, Turiya. And just like you can't exercise the body, we discussed this a few classes ago, you can't exercise the body to reach that spiritual platform, nor can you exercise the mind. You may create another bewildering material philosophy, but that won't reach the spiritual atmosphere. Why? What's that verse? Atak Shri Krishna na bhaved. That the Supreme Lord, this Rupa Goswami, Atak Shri Krishna na mari na bhavadendriya. Sevan mukhi jivado swayam eva spuryada. That the name, form, quality and pastimes of the Supreme Lord, the transcendental Supreme Lord, who's on this Krishna conscious platform, he's not revealed to the material mind and senses. So how do you get there? Well, that's why the first point of spiritual life is to understand you're the soul. So we exercise the soul. Right? We don't exercise the mind, the body, and become Olympic champion. We don't want to exercise a purely materially contaminated mind and come up with some new economic, social, psychological idea. Bogus, useless. We exercise the soul. We wake up the soul by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Because we know that. We're the soul. So we know that theoretically, right? What is that verse? Yantra Rudrani Mayaya. Ishwara Sarva Bhutanam Hriday Sayarjuna Tiste. Brahmayan Sarva Bhutani Yantra Rudrani Mayaya. That the Supreme Lord is sitting within everyone's heart. Seated in the heart. And that this material, along with the soul, and this material body is a yantra. It is a machine made of the material energy. So therefore, the aim of spiritual life is to pay attention to the supersoul. So there's that famous verse in the Upanishad, right? I must learn it. That the Supreme Lord and the Supersoul are like two birds in a tree. The body is the tree. The birds are separate from the tree. The body and mind is like the tree. And one bird is trying to enjoy the fruit of the tree. Taking the berries, the fruit, enjoying the fruit of the body. Like we explained there, the 5 elements of action, the fruit. But there's another bird there, and that is the Supreme Lord. And he is waiting, he is the Supersoul. He is waiting within the tree of the body, if you like, for the soul to pay attention to him. And that is bhakti. And when the soul's consciousness is focused on the Supreme Lord, then he attains Krishna consciousness. When the soul's consciousness is focused within his mind, upon the body, upon the paraphernalia of the body, your bag, your house, your family, your nation, then he remains in the material world, in the cycle of birth and death. He remains in the relative world of friends and enemies. In one life, he's a Manchester City supporter, and he hates Manchester United. And then the next life, he's born in a family of Manchester United supporters, and he hates Manchester City. Right? So this is the material world. Whatever we focus upon, we will be reborn in that situation according to calm, desire, and karma phal. Lokoyam karma bandhana. In the material world, people are bound by their karma and their desire. So, but the devotee, he wants to fix his mind upon Krishna, Krishna's leela, Krishna's pastimes, Krishna's devotees, Krishna's nam, rupa, form, qualities and pastimes. Nam, rupa, guna, leela. So, this is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. And then when he is well established on that platform, then he is in the divine consciousness. A person in the divine consciousness. Somebody, and this means that when one attains that turiya, that consciousness of Krishna, the transcendental platform, then he can see this. That I am not engaged in the material body, it's just indriyateshu. Indriyateshu. The senses are engaged with the material objects, but I am separate because he's self-realized. Muktir hitaban yata rupan swarupena abhavashtiti. What is liberation? It means to be situated in your swarup, your eternal relationship with Krishna. So when that is well established within the consciousness of the living entity, that becomes the focus. When we're in the neophyte condition, we're like a seed. The soul is like a seed that has not yet bloomed into Swarup. But when the Swarup is realized at Bhava Bhakti, by grace of Guru and Krishna, then he feels detached from the body automatically. Until then it's theoretical. But we can take theoretical hints here. For example, seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, right? Sleeping. So, do we make ourselves sleep? No. We can take a hint, right? When you lay down at night, you lay down, but you don't have a button in your brain to make yourself sleep. You just fall asleep, do you not? So this we can understand, that I'm aloof from the sleeping. The sleeping is imposed upon me, imposed upon my consciousness. So this is a good theoretical way. Sleeping, breathing, same thing, breathing. Of course, when we perform yoga, we control the breathing and chant with certain mantras to enter samadhi, but generally we're not engaged in breathing, are we? It's just going on automatically. And then many people, when they're talking, that's also going on automatically. So, anyway, let's see, breathing. Knows within, he actually, you see, then Krishna, it's a very nice translation, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Right? Are you making yourself breathe? No. It's a separate thing. It's the material body. Because while speaking, evacuating, yes, evacuating. Sometimes we want to go to the bathroom, but we can't. Right? The body won't cooperate. We have to take some herb. Receiving, yes. We might like to receive things, but they come of their own accord. Opening, closing the eyes. Has anybody here opened and closed their eyes consciously today? Yes. Well, maybe once or twice or something. So it's very interesting. We can get a hint now. He also knows that material senses are engaged with their objects, and he is aloof. So there are things that we're consciously exerting in this lift, but we can see that many of them are going on without our intervention consciously. So that gives us a hint that we're within this material body, but we're not the ultimate controller. So this material body, Yantra Rudrani Mayaya, it is run by the Devatas. If you want to know the technical aspect of that, it's very interesting. The soul has calm, he has desire. This is perceived by the Supersoul. Sutrimani Gana Iva, everything is resting upon Supersoul. This is relayed to the Devas by Supersoul within their heart, and the Devas actually run the body. So this is a further way we can understand that we're aloof. For example, my hand is now on this book. I want to rise it up, so I decide to rise it up. It's perceived by the Supersoul that the Supersoul is also in communion with the Devas, and they rise the hand. That's actually how it's done. The material the materially conditioned soul is never actually touching the material energy, because he is spiritual, but he is entangled in the relative world by illusory concepts and by focus on the material energy. And therefore it's his consciousness that becomes conditioned. Therefore, first part of chanting is Cetodapana Marjanam, right? Cleansing the mind. And then what happens? Bhavamahani Navagni Nivapanam. The material, when the mind is purified, then the material desire, Dhanam Janam Sundarim, money, followers, position, sex life, material opulence, these become, this desire for these things becomes placated. Because simultaneously one is realizing I'm the soul. So I realize I'm the soul, therefore I don't want things that are not satisfying to the soul. So then that is Chandrika, Shreya. Then this is the sign that his long-term good is going. And then the next stage of chanting is Vidya Vadu Jivanam. The material world is placated, and then he's realizing I'm soul. And then Anandam Buddhivardhanam, then he realizes his relationship with Krishna. And he lives eternally on that transcendental platform. So, I brought this book. So Krishna in the 29th chapter, actually this chapter starts with the question, knowledge and action in Krishna consciousness. That is because if you remember in the previous chapter, Krishna gave so many yagyas, breathing, exercise, charity, and then he told Arjuna that the fruit of these yagyas is transcendental knowledge. And transcendental knowledge gives detachment. Jnana vairag sa uchite. But then at the end of the chapter, he said, Arjuna, with this weapon of knowledge, cut the doubts within your heart and stand and fight. So Arjuna was confused. Is it knowledge and renunciation, or is it action? But actually in that last sloka the answer is given. The doubts that you have arisen within your mind should be slashed with the weapon of knowledge. Then perform bhakti, stand and fight. So Arjuna, of course, he's bringing that up for us. Actually, first I'll give you, so Jnana Yoga means that, to see, what is that verse? Bahunam janmanam ante, jnanavam mam prapadyante. right? If you have Jnanavam, after many, many births, Jnanavam, he who is possessor of spiritual knowledge, Jnanavam mam prapadyante, he surrenders to me. So, in that sloka, if you have knowledge, you'll perform your devotion. Because that spiritual knowledge, if it is actual, it will make you aloof from the material energy. You'll be more and more detached. So, and then Jnanavam mam prapadyante. And what is that spiritual knowledge? Vasudeva Savamiti, right? That is spiritual knowledge. We've been brought up in the school and they say there was a big bang and it became conscious and all this and it's all matter. But here, in 28th chapter, Bhagavad-Gita, what is the vision of Jnana Yoga? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one should neither praise or criticize. Don't enter into the duality of the material world, Krishna saying. The conditioned nature and activities of other persons. Now this is Jnana Yoga. Rather, one should see this world as simply the combination of material nature. Vasudeva, Krishna has expanded as the material energy, the soul, and the supersoul in this material energy. See this world as simply the combination of material nature and the enjoying souls. That's two of the expansions of Krishna. All based on one absolute truth. So, Sutre Mani Guna Iva. So this is the vision of Jnana Yoga. This material energy and all the souls within it, they're all resting upon the Supreme Lord. Whoever indulges in praising or criticizing the quality and behavior of others, praising, criticizing, the duality again, will quickly become deviated from his own best interest, right? Because you're entering into the duality syndrome. You're seeing good and bad. This is the material consciousness. By entanglement in illusory dualities, just like the man and the polar bear. They all have everyone has their opinion. So if you become a frog, a croaking frog in the duality material world, then you will become forgetful of the absolute world. Just as the embodied spirit soul loses external consciousness when his senses are overcome by the illusion of dreaming or the death-like state of deep sleep, susupti and swapna, so a person experiencing material duality must encounter illusion and death. So you remain in Maya and you remain in the cycle of birth and death if you keep analyzing this world as good and bad, accept and reject. That which is expressed by material words or meditated upon by the material mind is not ultimate truth. What therefore is actually good or bad within this insubstantial world of duality? And how can the extent of such good and bad be measured? All right? People are always debating, this is good, feminism, this ism, that ism, socialism. Although shadows, echoes, and mirages are only illusory reflections of real things, such reflections do cause a semblance of meaningful or comprehensible perception. In the same way, although the identifications of the conditioned soul with the material mind and ego is illusory, he's aloof from them actually, by his spiritual nature, this identification generates fear, kuntaloka, anxiety, with him even up to the moment of death. So the materialist is always in anxiety. What I've got, I might lose. I want more. I have a lack. So then Krishna comes to the other point. Three things. The material world is expansion of the living entities, that's Krishna, the expansion of Krishna's material energy. The super soul alone is the ultimate controller and creator of this world. And thus he alone is also the created. Similarly, the soul of all existence himself both maintains and is maintained, withdraws and is withdrawn. No other entity can be properly ascertained as separate from him, the Supreme Soul, who nonetheless is distinct from everything and everyone else. The appearance of the threefold material nature, which is perceived within him, has no actual basis. It is just a material concoction like we're trying to explain. It's just an opinion, it's an interpretation of the sensory input. It is called pratyaksha, sense perception, and then anuman, interpretation. Has no actual basis. It is just illusory interpretation. Rather, you should understand that this material nature, composed of the three moles, is simply the product of his illusory potency. So this is the material world. It's dismissed as illusory. Do you understand? So we shouldn't be overly concerned about the good and bad, Krishna is saying. One who has properly understood the process of becoming firmly fixed in theoretical and realized knowledge, as described herein by me, does not indulge in material criticism or praise. Like the sun, he wanders freely throughout the world. So this is Jnana Yoga. So we're going to read the step beyond this. So this is the point, that if you see the material world, Jnanavam, Vasudeva Savamiti, that all the living entities are Krishna's expansions, and the actual material energy is the expansion of Krishna, and it is all resting upon Krishna as Super Soul, and it is all maintained by Super Soul, then you don't become concerned. You understand that this is the gross material dream, and you fix your mind upon the Super Soul. And you inquire into the nature of the Super Soul, and the bhakti process is the step beyond. What is that? Brahmabhuta prasanatma na soshati na kankshati, right? No sadness, no desiring. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu, right? He sees everyone equally. He's not on the friends and enemies. Mad bhaktim labate param. So from that liberated stage of understanding this material world is just an expansion of the illusory energy with the soul and the super soul mixed in, he becomes like the sun. So, in the next chapter, which is called Bhakti-yoga, Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 29, verse 8, Krishna starts telling Uddhava Bhakti-yoga. So once you're like the sun, free, understanding this is the illusory external world, which I am aloof from by either theoretically or by practical realization, then you should engage in bhakti-yoga, as Prabhupada said in the purport. You pleasing Hrishikena Rishikesha Sevadam Bhaktam Uchite. But here, Krishna is going to tell Uddhava the understanding of bhakti in this way. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Yes, I shall describe to you the principles of devotion to me, by executing which a mortal human being," that's you and me, "will conquer unconquerable death." And that's what all these materialists that think they're the body, that's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to do genetic things to the body so it doesn't get old, and they're doing sacrifices because they want to become gods or something. But this is how you become immortal. Always remembering me, Manmana. One should perform all his duties for me without becoming impetuous. What does that mean? That means we have so many duties, right? Manmana bhavamat bhakto, we remember Krishna in a devotional way. We wake up devotion through jnana and vairag and meditating upon Krishna, serving the order of the spiritual master. But then we have to brush our teeth, we have to wash our clothes, right? We have to fill in this form for the tax office or whatever. All our duties, perform all your duties for me without becoming impetuous. This means madhyaji, right? Manmanabhav. Everything that you do, cleaning the kitchen, washing your clothes, giving a class, it's all offered to the Supreme Lord and the Spiritual Master. You perform it for Him. This is how you enter the spiritual platform, Turiya, through Seva Bhav. That's the difference. In the material world, everyone is serving themselves, and in the spiritual world, everyone has service attitude to the Supreme Lord. That's the difference. One should perform without becoming impetuous. That means one should concentrate on all his activities and perform them nicely. That means if you heat milk in the kitchen, you should wash the pot afterward. If you leave the pot there dirty, then that's not a properly performed yajna. With mind and intelligence offered to me, that means just like it says, Krishna says in the Gita, right, that you study this conversation, you're worshipping me with your intelligence. You're performing bhajan. With mind offered to me, one should fix his mind in attraction to my devotional service. So you should develop rag, first vaidhi, rules and regulations, but within the rules and regulations, you should develop, one should fix his mind in attraction, rag, to Krishna. One should take shelter of holy places where my saintly devotees reside. And one should be guided by the exemplary activities of my devotees. That's especially clear in Chaitanya Leela, because there Krishna's devotees is all about, and also Bhagavatam, who appear among the demigods, demons and human beings. Right? Prahlad Maharaj, he appeared amongst the Asura. Ambarish. Pandavas appeared as human beings. With a pure heart, one should see me. This is the whole thing now. Now from Jnana, you see everything as the energy of Krishna, the expansion. But now with Bhakti, the step beyond, Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param, with a pure heart, one should see me, the Supreme Soul, within all beings, and also within oneself. Right? So this is another step, right? You're seeing Krishna to be both unblemished by anything material, all the living entities. It's the consciousness that's contaminated. Just like you can affect the sunlight by putting a red sheet or a green sheet, but you can't affect the sun. So all the living entities, they're in illusion, but it's the consciousness. But the soul remains untouched by material energy. And also present everywhere. I'll say that again. With a pure heart, one should see me, the Supreme Soul, within all beings, and also within oneself, to be both unblemished by anything material, and also present everywhere, both externally and internally, just like the omnipresent sky. So the sky contains everything, the Akash, but the Akash is never contaminated. O brilliant Uddhava, one who thus, this is very important now, views all living entities with the idea I am present within each of them, and who by taking shelter of this divine knowledge offers due respect to everyone, is considered actually wise. That's wisdom, to see that Krishna is in the heart of all living entities. Such a man sees equally the Brahmana and the outcast, right? Pandita Samadarshana. The thief and the charitable promoter of Brahminical culture, the sun and the tiny sparks of a fire, the gentle and the cruel. He sees them all equally. For him who constantly meditates upon my presence within all persons, the bad tendencies, right? Because we're corrupted by our consciousness is corrupted by the material energy. The bad tendencies of rivalry, envy, abusiveness, along with the false ego, are very quickly destroyed. Disregarding the ridicule of one's companions, one should give up bodily conception and its accompanying embarrassment. It's embarrassing to think you're the body. What are you thinking? You're thinking you're a bag of bones. Right? One should offer obeisances before all, even the dogs, outcasts, cows and asses, falling flat upon the ground like a rod. Mam namaskuru, right? Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyadi, do everything as an offering to Krishna. Mam namaskuru. So this is it. It doesn't just mean have respect for the deity in the temple, but you must have respect for all living entities, because Krishna is there. They're also temples. And then one will overcome rivalry, envy, and abusiveness. Those three words are not, they mean, you see, we envy the superior. If somebody's got more money than us, we become envious. If somebody has the same amount of money, we have a sense of rivalry. I'm going to get more than him. And abusiveness, those that don't have much money, then we think, I've got more money than this person, I'm better. You're poor, look at your cloth, right? Right, this is the envy in the material world. We hate the superior, envy, we have rivals with our peer group, and we consider ourselves greater than those that are in misfortunate condition. So the devotee doesn't have that. Because he sees the super soul accompanying the soul within all bodies. Until one has fully developed the ability to see me within all living beings, one must continue to worship me by this process with the activities of speech, mind and body. By such transcendental knowledge of the all-pervading personality of Godhead, one is able to see the absolute truth everywhere. Vasudeva Savamiti. Freed thus from all doubts, one gives up fruitive activities. So karma phal, like we said, the 5 endeavors, the fruit, then you just act for the Supreme without consideration. There's that sloka in the Gita, right? Kleshas adhikarascha. Arjuna, you have a right to perform your duty, but you don't have a right to the fruit. Never consider yourself the performer of activities or the enjoyer of the fruit. You perform your duty, but it's an offering to Krishna. Whereas in the material consciousness, we are always performing an activity to get the fruit. But a devotee, he's not fruitive. He lives in the eternal time, and he performs activities for the Supreme Lord. He's not concerned about some fruit. One is able, freed thus, one gives up fruitive activity, fruitive mentality. And if we still have fruitive mentality, we remain in the material world. You understand? Because you have to take the fruit. Indeed, I consider this process, using one's mind, words and bodily functions for realizing me within all living beings, to be the best possible method of spiritual enlightenment. Now consider that. What's Krishna saying here? I consider this process, using one's mind, words and bodily functions for realizing me, how? Within all living beings, to be the best method of spiritual enlightenment. My dear Uddhava, because I have personally established it, this process of devotional service unto me is transcendental and free from any material motivation. Certainly a devotee never suffers even the slightest loss by adopting this process. Right? So there's more, and I encourage you to read it. But that, see, you know, that's like, started at verse 8, that's 19, 20. So in 12 verses, Krishna has given the best process of devotional service. To see everything as the expansion of the Supreme Lord, and to see that He is present in the living being, all living beings, and one should perform all one's duties as an offering to Him. Right? This is bhakti-yoga. Srila Prabhupada Sadhu Sangha Bhagavad-Gita Ki Jai. Any question? Yes, Madhuri.
As far as I understand, you were talking about the principle, the very first thing was the principle.
Say again.
First thing you mentioned about the principle that we have to not get entangled with delusion by seeing the good and the bad, just, and gradually when we overcome that, then we get into the bhakti process where we discover and we understand that whatever we're doing, it's an offering to the Lord, and everyone is part and parcel of Lord. So, but just trying to understand this principle in our current situation, wherein we're not dealing with completely materialistic people, we're dealing with devotees.
Yeah.
And we see good in them, and side by side we also see something that's not favorable to our own consciousness or conditions. So in that scenario, we're not completely like seeing the good and the bad, and yet at the same time, how do we apply this?
Yeah, this is a good question. How to apply this practically? Because, for example, if you wander around Delhi, you have to be careful who's good and bad. There's many pickpockets, right? Many thieves, many taxi drivers. They want to double charge you. So you have to have your wits about you. But the fact is that you see them all as living entities, but that doesn't mean to say that you go and embrace the tiger. I love you. You have Krishna in the heart, dear tiger. Right? This is the point. So you have to apply the knowledge carefully. And for devotee, he's encouraged, like Krishna said, go to the holy place, hear from the sadhus, associate with the sadhus. Right? So you should always try to associate with devotees. And the devotee has the Madhyamadikari, the one. He has fourth advice is given. He should worship the Supreme Lord. He should make friendship with fellow devotees. Should be friendship. Should one happy friendship family. Third thing, the Balisha, those that are ignorant, they just don't know devotional principles, then you should give mercy to them. And fourth, those that are Ravana, Kamsa, the demoniac, Upeksha. don't bother with them. Don't get into argument with them. So, this is very important. That yes, everybody is spirit soul, and we're seeing the energy of Krishna anywhere, everywhere. But we have to avoid situations that make us forget Krishna. The focus of a sadhaka is manmana, to always focus the mind on Krishna. Therefore he uses mantra within the mind, mantra, japa mantra, mantra combined with breathing, to always focus. But at the same time he has his wits about him. Who is good or bad? Who is a dangerous person? And for a devotee, he's under the shelter of Krishna. So Krishna guides the intelligence. But at the same time, the world isn't a pop song, right? Like a pop song. All you need is love, da 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 da. No. You also have to have borders, and you also have wits, and you also have to understand who is good and bad. But the devotee, if you remember, it's a very good question because it evokes, he doesn't get concerned about praising or criticizing the good and bad. He sees they are loko yam karma bandhana. They're bound by their karma. Also, Bhakti Vinod in Bhakti Alok, that book, he says that unless you are somebody's spiritual master, you shouldn't correct them. He says that, Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Sometimes if you correct people, who are you? Right? They immediately become argumentative. It's Kali Yuga. Everyone's on a tightrope. So that you don't praise or blame, but you're still seeing who's good and bad. So you can bargain with the taxi driver. And you have to have your wits in the marketplace, right? Like when you go to Loy Bazaar, you're in enemy territory. When you go into a shop, you're in enemy territory. They only want to get the money out of your pocket into their pocket. So the battle is how to get what you want with the least money going from your pocket to their pocket. So, yes, you have to use your intelligence. Didami buddhi yogam tam. So Krishna will help you. But I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, but this generally says the gist is, don't become overly concerned with the good and bad. You can be learned in so many things. Just like in the Nectar of Devotion it says, don't read too many books. But that doesn't mean to say don't read too many books about bhakti. You can read every book about bhakti. But it means don't, I want to read all Karl Marx's books. I want to read everything in the newspaper. I want to read everything in the material world. All the political and psychological theories. It means that this material world, be aloof from it. There's good and bad, relatively speaking, but ultimately it's all illusory. But have your wits about you. Does that answer? So the gist is, as Krishna says, if you become overly concerned with the good and bad, the duality, you'll be distracted from being a lotus. The lotus, they open their petals to Gornitai, the sun and moon. But the crocus, the frogs, we should have more socialism. We should have more capitalism. Less taxation. Well, I can agree with that. Anyway, but we have to understand that our concern as devotees, now that we have a few years in this body, is to realize the absolute truth. And you know, in the Ishopanishad, you know that verse number 14? Krishna says, one should know this material energy with all the devas and demons and kinnaras, and one should understand how the material world is. But then one should also understand the spiritual world. So we want to study up. We want to read Ujjvala Nilamani. We want to know the Leela of Krishna by Vishwanath Chakravarti, Krishna Bhavanamrita. We want to read Jaiva Dharma. We want to learn what is Rasa Tattva. We want to know what is going on in the spiritual world. We don't want to just become expert on the material platform. Be smart, have your wits about you. But at the same time, our real business is understanding the Leela of Krishna. What is that verse? Janma kama tame divyam evam yo bati tatvataha takva deham punarjanma naitimameti sarjana. Once you understand Krishna, his divine nature and activities, then you never take birth in this material world, but attain his abode. So how do you go to the spiritual world? By studying the Leela of Krishna now, knowing the Leela of Krishna, by chanting, by focusing the mind on transcendence, and then you go there. But if you focus your mind on the material world, you go there. But when you're in the material world, don't think the world is a pop song. You know, all you need is, imagine there's no bad people. No, if you're in the jungle, you must know what a tiger is, what a crocodile is. Therefore it's in the 5th canto. So you can pay obeisances to the crocodile, but from about 50 yards. Don't touch the feet of the crocodile. He'll not think, oh, what a nice saintly lady. He'll think that this is my lunch. So in the material world you have to have, in French they call it nous, right? Nous. You have to have your wits about you. And that is not against seeing the material world as illusory. There's different types of illusion. There's good people and there's bad people materially. And who is the good person? The good person, sadhu sangha, is the person with whom it's easy to talk about Krishna. If you want to know who is the sadhu, who is good association, it's very easy. That person with whom it is easy to talk about Krishna, that is sadhu sangha. Satatam kirtayanto mam yadantas tridavrata. Huh? What's the next line? Satatam kirtayanto mam yatatam api siddhanam. Anyway, so the sadhu is always talking about Krishna, and he's easy to talk to about Krishna. But if you find people are always talking about, politics, then they're not sadhu. Huh? Of course we have to know, if there's a riot going on in Delhi, then don't go until a week later. But still our concern is realization of Krishna. All right, we'll finish on this point. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. Thank you for coming. Srila Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad-Gita, Sadhu Sangha, Vrindavan Dham, Srimati Radharani Ki Jai.